When a serious crime is committed and the police need all the help they can get, there's one group of people they turn to time after time: the expert witnesses.
An expert witness is critical because they're going to have that deep level knowledge to really determine if something stands out that doesn't look quite right.
An extraordinary army of men and women with the expertise to reveal the hidden clues criminals have left behind.
My brain just sort of exploded with different ideas. Even a single-celled organism can solve a crime.
They search harder and look deeper, using the very latest techniques.
We're constantly evolving, constantly improving. It's soon going to become impossible to get away with murder.
This is the inside story of how science helps solve some of the UK's most complex cases.
That was one of my eureka moments in all my 30 years of forensic examination.
The chances of finding something were really incredibly slim. That tiny possibility had to be explored.
I've seen people talk about justice being done, but no matter what kind of punishment he faced, it would never be enough.
This is the story of the expert witness. In this programme, we're in Edinburgh to find out how a forensically trained dentist is brought in to identify marks on a teenager's body.
The lower teeth are relatively regular and lacking in any incisal edge defect, and that in itself can be significant.
And an expert witness joins an operation to tackle a shady business targeting football fans.
This is a huge red flag. It really just comes down to a keen eye and my 30 years plus experience.
Bite mark analysis has a role to play. It's not a simple role, but it does make a safe and reliable contribution to criminal justice, and that's been demonstrated in cases in the UK over decades.
December 2018. It's a freezing morning in Edinburgh when a dog walker discovers the body of a girl. Police are alerted and quickly identify the victim as 15-year-old Mary O'Neill.
Police are asking the public to come forward if they have any information about the final hours of a teenager who was found dead in Edinburgh. The body of 15-year-old Mary O'Neill was discovered on Calton Hill early on Saturday after she failed to return home on Friday night.
Kerry Nixon is a consultant forensic psychologist and has closely examined this case.
Mary O'Neill was a 15-year-old girl who went to Portobello High School. She lived in a little town near Edinburgh called Willowbrae. Her parents described her as being obsessed with music, and her dream was to one day study music at university. The events of the night of the incident are so incredibly sad for any parent to listen to. She told her parents that she was meeting a friend and going to the Christmas markets in Edinburgh. But actually, she was going to meet a boy, an 18-year-old man, that she had been chatting to on an online app called Yubo. They'd been talking and agreed to meet up on that night.
Analysis of Mary's social media accounts revealed that the man she met was Ewan Fulton, a shop worker from Livingston.
He shares, in his words, a bottle of vodka with her, but she gets so drunk that he says she can't walk. He then admits that there was sexual activity and what he described as heavy petting. He also admits that there was biting and there was love bites on her body to substantiate that, and also some compressing of her neck.
Retired Detective Chief Superintendent Paul Dockley followed the case closely.
She met with Ewan Fulton, who then plied her with drink and took her to an isolated location. With the content of the alcohol she drank, she was incapable of getting herself back home.
Fulton claimed Mary lost consciousness, at which point he left her on the bench and went home. A post-mortem showed Mary subsequently died from hypothermia.
This is where a young lady has actually been left to die on a very cold night in Edinburgh. She was sexually assaulted and left partly clothed with no assistance given to getting her back to safety. His intention probably wasn't for her to die, but subsequently she did because of his negligence. He didn't take care of her. Here's a man of 18 who's with a 15-year-old girl, and he's more concerned about getting his train home than he is about the welfare of Mary.
Police needed evidence to prove Fulton was responsible for Mary's death and turned to texts sent between them.
The key evidence was the information on the phones. So the prior communication between Mary and Fulton, before they met, he texted her saying, "Oh my God, you're going to freeze to death." He knew from the text message that it was freezing. He'd sent that, "Oh my God, you're going to freeze to death." That was in his head. She was 15, she was drunk. He left a girl that was unable to walk, was unable to speak. Anybody leaving that place would know that they were leaving that girl in danger.
Once police had announced that Fulton was in custody, a number of other young women came forward and reported that they had suffered similar assaults.
The significance of Fulton's previous offending is so important in this case. He's got a history of assaults. He's got a history of targeting young girls. He's got a history of biting. He's got a history of compressing necks. They are all significant risk factors. This was a young man who was showing many signs of high risk of committing a sexual offence. He then admitted it. He admitted his guilt, that he did leave her, and he admitted that his actions led to her death, or his inaction led to her death.
Fulton had admitted his guilt, but that admission could easily be withdrawn.
Now that admission needs corroboration, because obviously he could retract his admission at any time. In addition, we will want to prove that he was actually the offender who bit the body.
Detectives still needed to prove their case and looked for evidence to show beyond doubt that Fulton sexually assaulted Mary before leaving her to die. They turned to forensic odontologist Dr. Douglas Sheasby.
I got a call from Police Scotland in December 2018. They asked for my assistance in the investigation of suspected bite marks in this female victim.
Police hoped Dr. Sheasby, by using his expertise, could match a mark left on Mary's body to Fulton's teeth.
This is the image of one of the bite marks. We're looking at two superimposed bite marks in this location. We have an initial contact with the upper front teeth, and then a second contact, a more forceful contact with the biting edges of the upper incisor teeth.
By studying the police photos, Dr. Sheasby worked out the likely dental features that caused the injury.
The identifying features were the upper central incisor teeth were distinctive in terms of the marks that they left. There's also detail of the biting edges of the lower incisors, so there was a lot of identifiable distinctive features.
Dr. Sheasby next compared his conclusions to a cast of Fulton's actual teeth.
The dental cast examination is a relatively simple one because you're looking at life-size duplicates of this person's teeth, and it's just a simple matter of making clinical notes, if you like, of the teeth that are present, their position, and their identifying features in terms of biting edges, cusps, etc. And simply a note of all of your findings of this examination.
This similar cast shows some of the features Dr. Sheasby looks out for.
So in this case, the upper dental arch is clearly not regular. We have the lateral incisor, which is displaced towards the lip. The biting edges, the incisal edges of the central incisors are deficient. So there are certain features that are noteworthy. The lower teeth are relatively regular and lacking in any incisal edge defect, and that in itself can be significant.
Dr. Sheasby compared the results from the photos with those features identified on Fulton's cast.
The comparison of the predictor in this case with the examination of the dental cast of the suspect biter provided an explanation for all of the features that were visible in the mark, and consequently this person caused this bite mark.
A youth has been charged in connection with the death of a 15-year-old found dead at Calton Hill in Edinburgh. Mary O'Neill from Willow Brae was discovered at the city landmark in December last year. An 18-year-old is due to appear at Edinburgh Sheriff Court later.
In June 2021, at Edinburgh Sheriff Court, Ewan Fulton pleaded guilty to sexual activity with a child and to the culpable homicide of Mary O'Neill.
The culpable homicide charge stated that Fulton acted with utter disregard for the consequences of his actions towards Mary. He'd abandoned the girl in a remote and exposed location in a state of partial undress, without means to contact anyone, and he failed to seek help for her.
I would imagine that the officers in this case worked extremely hard to draw together the evidence. And the work of the odontologist, Dr. Sheasby, was critical in proving the guilt of Fulton in this case.
Well, the police are always happy when an opinion is expressed that supports obviously what they're doing. They're under huge pressure in all sorts of ways, so it's a good feeling.
Expert witnesses are crucial. It is the job of the police and the courts to determine guilt or innocence. So when you have something like a bite mark and you have the perpetrator, an expert witness who is able to say those two things go together, that is crucial, because then there's no uncertainty.
After court, Mary's parents said they'd lost their beautiful girl who was loved by everyone. Fulton will be sentenced next month.
The court must have taken into consideration the fact that there was only 2 to 3 years between their ages at the time of these offences being committed. And he was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months imprisonment. He will be on the sex offenders register for the remaining of his life.
Fulton, who's now 20, admitted killing Miss O'Neill. He took part in sexual activity with her and compressed her neck and culpably and recklessly endangered her health and life and exposed her to risk of injury and death.
This case is so incredibly sad because we've got a young girl here who's innocently using an app, chatting to a young man, you know, probably excited to meet him. Goes along to what she thinks is a date, and Fulton ends her life.
My satisfaction is derived from safely and reliably being a forensic ornithologist. It makes a difference in large, complex set of circumstances, so I'm one of many contributors to serving justice and getting justice for the family who have lost their daughter.
Over the years, I've seen tens of thousands of signed photographs, documents and so on, and so that gives me the experience and the eye to spot the fake signatures and all the little tricks that the forgers will do to try and fool you.
In recent years, the market for sports memorabilia has exploded. Antiques and arts expert Wayne Colquhoun thinks he knows why.
Everybody wants a piece of their idol these days. A signature, a shirt, anything that they've touched, and the whole memorabilia side of the art and antiques profession has grown to develop to give people what they want.
But unfortunately, not every item up for sale can be taken at face value.
The issue of forgery is massive. The piece that I'm looking at, whether it be a work of art, a piece of pottery, a signature, or a piece of sport memorabilia, always has to prove to me that it is genuine. But in the modern context of a current football star's signature, £150 for 3 scrawly bits of writing really is buyer beware. It's take your chances, really.
In 2015, Neil Martin from Dorset Council Trading Standards received a tip-off from a legitimate sporting memorabilia business. They raised concerns about the authenticity of signed items, which were being offered for sale online by a company called FA Premier Signings.
What raised the alarm was the range of signatures that this company purported to have. He knew from experience there are certain players that, as a legitimate company, he cannot get signatures from, yet FA Premier Signings were claiming to have unlimited stocks from those players.
In order to investigate, Neil made a test purchase from FA Premier Signings, buying a shirt purportedly signed by Wayne Rooney and having it delivered to a dummy address.
Most items bought from legitimate memorabilia suppliers will come with a certificate of authenticity. FA Premier Signings were no exception. They accompanied this Wayne Rooney shirt with a certificate showing it was a genuine item.
Any idol signature, you're going to be talking, starting at £50 going up. But a Wayne Rooney signature, could be talking about £150. I mean, £150 to some people mightn't sound a lot, but to some people, it's 2 days' work. To some people, it might even be a week's earnings. So a certificate, in my opinion, isn't worth the paper it's written on, because I see far too many certificates out there for what the amount of signatures can be.
And how better to check if a signature is genuine than by going straight to the source?
One of the first steps we did was give the shirt to Wayne Rooney. He examined the signature and said, that's not my signature. And he did do a statement for us, but was not willing to appear in court.
Now, with good reason to suspect that FA Premier Signings were selling forged signatures, Neil needed proof that he could present in court. Enter Gary King, one of the country's leading experts on handwriting and signature analysis.
Initially, I was just sent some images from a very well put together website, FA Premier Signings, and it showed signed football shirts from every one of the Premier League clubs, Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool and so on. Now, if you know anything about obtaining signatures like this, you'll know that it's very difficult to get fully signed shirts from any of these teams, especially in multiples. The value of these shirts can be quite high. A genuine Man United shirt would sell for hundreds of pounds if you could find a genuine one. What stood out from the images I could see on the website were the even spacing and so on of the signatures on the shirts. In the case of a fake signed shirt, you'll often see that the signatures are all the same size, they all slant in the same way, they're nicely evenly spaced, they look perfect, which is often what the customer actually wants. He wants one that looks perfect, but those perfect looking shirts, they are the ones that are fake.
But before he could make a definitive decision, Gary needed to physically examine some of the suspect's shirts.
Neil sent me a squad-signed Liverpool shirt, a squad-signed England shirt, and a Thierry Henry Arsenal shirt. The Liverpool shirt was especially interesting because it had a lot of signatures on it, and it also had some of the players' numbers on there as well. All of that is extra detail that makes my life a lot easier. Now, this isn't the shirt Neil sent me because the original shirt has been destroyed by trading standards, but this is a very similar shirt. So the first thing I have to do is to determine whether or not the signatures are actually signed by hand or whether they were perhaps produced mechanically or printed. My work is fairly straightforward. It's actually quite simple. It really just comes down to magnification, a keen eye, and my 30 years plus experience. When you sign your name, you are not just moving your hand across the paper up and down, you're actually moving your hand away from the paper, you're varying the pressure and you're adjusting the speed.
By looking for the telltale marks these subtle changes in pressure and speed leave in ink, Gary was able to determine that the signatures on the suspect's shirt had at least been written by hand.
I know they're freehand, but at this point I don't know whether they're fake. So now it comes down to comparing the suspect signatures with known good examples. I could see that the signatures were fairly accurate. He'd done a fairly good job of getting those correct. But looking more closely, I could see that there were significant differences in small areas, the cross of a T, the dot of an I, the way he did the numbers. Too much repetition.
It was the numbers which ultimately allowed Gary to come to his final decision.
Many of the squad have signed their team numbers below their signature, but because the forger has not thought about what he's doing, he's added the numbers in his own hand. So you will see the same numbers repeated in exactly the same style. This is a huge red flag and strongly suggested that all of these signatures were signed by the same person.
Now Gary had concluded that FA Premier signings were selling forged signatures, the investigation into the business could move to the next stage.
We were delighted with Gary's statement when it came back. It confirmed what we strongly suspected, but that gave us the hard evidence to present to the magistrates, and from that they granted us a warrant to actually enter the business premises. The business was being run from a residential address, so we went together with police officers and knocked on the door of the property.
Hi, my name's Neil Martin from Trading Standards in Dorset. You just leave the door open. You just leave the door open.
The business was run from the home of David Rennie in Banbury, Oxfordshire.
Do you know why we're here? Okay, right. What we want to have a look at is your business records and stocks that you keep.
I asked Mr. Rennie, have you been signing these things yourself? And he said, yes. I said to him, how long have you been doing this? And he said, too long. The scale of this business was unbelievable. We were able to establish that FA Premier signings in a 7-year period had sold over 4,500 signed items. We also found that in that period they made a huge amount of money, £1.7 million, but have paid no tax or no national insurance whatsoever. Instead, they spent all the proceeds that they've made on luxury holidays and nice cars.
Greed is often what trips these people up. They produce one signature, sell it, make some money, think, oh yeah, I'll make another one. And before you know it, they're doing dozens of them and making lots of money. But of course, when you do that, you're exposing yourself to the possibility that somebody, trading standards or whatever, is going to spot it. And that's their downfall.
All you need to forge a signature is a piece of paper and a pen and the intent to deceive. And there you are. Once you've made the first £150, it's very tempting to continue to the next £150, carries on, and then suddenly it becomes a £1 million industry which keeps on going until you get caught.
In February 2018, the case went to trial. Mr. Rennie pleaded not guilty to any of the charges brought against him.
Gary King's evidence, because he is regarded as an expert in this country in autographs and handwriting analysis, this wasn't challenged by the defence. They accepted his evidence, and so it was crucial for our case.
Thanks to Gary's expert's testimony, David Rennie was sentenced to 6 years in prison for fraud and money laundering.
This was a very large-scale fraud. They supplied shirts, signed memorabilia, internationally, all around the world from customers. There are thousands of people out there who were disappointed to find that actually what they bought were fake signatures, absolutely worthless. That was heartbreaking. There were people who had bought items for their partners for a special birthday, thinking they'd bought them something really special for their favourite team or favourite player, and it turned out what they bought was worthless. It just goes to show how ruthless and unfeeling FA Premier signings were as a business.
It's diabolical that these people trade on the misery of young children and unsuspecting members of the public who will find out that they've been duped. It brings all the profession, whether it be in memorabilia or art and antiques, into question.
It is important that what we buy as consumers is genuine, and it's very satisfying for me when we do get somebody into court and we prove that what they've been doing is fakery and they get their just desert.